The underwater world and the vast reaches of outer space are curiously interrelated. For example, from underwater come algae, which are rich in nutrition, and also liberate oxygen from carbon dioxide. They can thus help sustain life in the vacuum of space. My name's Mike Nelson. I was working on saltwater algae for a space laboratory, searching in offshore waters for new specimens, and also checking out desirable spots on the ocean floor for experimental farming of algae. In the course of my search, I ran across a large area covered with a type of plant that I'd never seen before. I was puzzled by its abundance. I cut some samples and loaded them into a sack for the lab. As I headed for the surface, I had no way of knowing that the harmless-looking strands of green leaf would prove almost fatal to me. In the space laboratory next morning, I got some more information on the plants that I had discovered from my collaborator, Dr. Ken Madison.
Mike, do you know the English word assassin is derived from the Arabic hashashin?
No.
Do you know what hashashin means?
Oh, I'm not up in my Arabic.
Well, literally it means hemp eater, but by extension it means someone who chews the hemp to get the hashish out of it.
All this come under the heading of classified information?
All right, I'll get to the point. Hashish is one of the most violent drugs that man has ever put in his system.
Well, that's something I do know.
All right. Now, the active principle in that drug, similar to what we call marijuana, could be extracted from those plants you brought up from the bottom of the ocean.
Really? Well, the only hashish that I know about comes from Indian hemp. That grows on dry land.
Hemp is only one of a number of plants that produces narcotic resin. And whoever has developed this underwater strain has added to that number.
Well, how do you know that someone's developed it?
Because it's a hybrid. And it was produced by a brilliant job of crossbreeding. Now, the original of this plant is called cannabis. It's from the family Urticaceae.
Oh, that was from another family.
Someone has succeeded in crossing it with a marine plant, which enables the cannabis to survive underwater. And what's more important, to go right on producing that hypnotic resin. And that, of course, is what makes people see and feel and hear things that aren't there.
And they can actually process something like marijuana from this plant?
Yeah. Something that has the same effect, only probably stronger.
Boy, that's quite a setup. There could be acres of this stuff down there.
Yeah, it's kind of frightening when you think about the possibilities. Somebody could produce narcotics by the ton.
Be cheap, too. Cheap enough for a kid to buy it.
And underwater plants grow very rapidly. And besides, they can be sown and harvested in secret.
They can be sown and harvested, maybe. As far as keeping it a secret, I think I can do something about that. Yeah, will you give me the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, please? And I want to talk to Andy Watson there. Andy Watson lost no time in joining us. Ken and I were both amazed at the amount of interest that he displayed in our report. It's right out there in that direction. About a quarter of a mile past the breakwater.
How big was the field?
Well, it's hard to tell. You know, visibility isn't that good underwater. There's an awful lot of that stuff out there.
Well, we'd like to know more about that underwater area before we take any specific action, but this could close a troublesome open file.
Open file?
Yeah. We picked up a pusher not long ago. He had an unusually large amount of what appeared to be marijuana in his possession.
Appeared to be marijuana?
That's right. Under analysis, it turned out to be related, but more powerful.
Well, that describes our plant all right.
It describes it perfectly. The chemical analysis also indicated a strong iodine content.
Which associated it with the ocean.
Right. We figured it was stored underwater, but, well, the ocean's a big place. We searched for a hiding place of some kind, but so far nothing has shown up. Well, the possibility of it being grown underwater never occurred to us.
So what's the next step?
Well, could you pick up some additional specimens of the plant for us?
Sure.
And can you make a survey of the general area, give us an idea of the quantity of these plants?
Well, it'll take a little time, depending on the size of the area.
When can you start?
How about now?
Well, any sooner than that would be contrary to regulations.
I piled my equipment into a small boat and headed out for the narcotics fields. I hoped to attract as little attention as possible. If this were a commercial marijuana installation, it might be under some sort of long-range surveillance and observation I didn't want or need.
Excuse me for a minute, Ken. I'm going to spot some men around this area just in case. Keep an eye on them.
Sure.
As nearly as I could tell, this was a corner or a boundary of the narcotics field. I could see that it went off in two directions from here. As I had told Andy, I would have to circle the field to get an idea of its size.
How long can he stay down on one tank of air?
Depends on the size of the tank and the depth of the dive.
Well, he'd be in a rough spot without that boat, wouldn't he?
If that narcotics field is very large, he may not be able to do the job at all.
This was shaping up as quite a project. The field was far larger than I had imagined. I swam along the perimeter, peering about for some end to it. I had worried about being observed on the surface. I didn't know what was going on much closer at hand. It was time to surface and change tanks. To mark the spot where I could resume the search, I set out a marker buoy. I had enough air left to get a few more samples for Andy Watson. The strange knob on the end of the spear knocked me for a loop. two divers evidently thought I was out cold. I played along with the gag, even when they pulled the air hose from my mouth. Fortunately, they didn't wait around. As soon as they were out of sight, I got out of there fast. A little first aid, and I was back in business with a couple of very sympathetic listeners.
I don't know, hold it for a while.
Thank you.
You had just sent up a marker boy, huh?
Yeah, I was running low on air, and I wanted to be sure of my starting point before I returned to carry on my survey.
Was that when you were hit?
Well, it wasn't quite then. I decided to cut some plants first. It was when I was heading back to my boat that it happened.
But if they wanted to kill Mike, why didn't they use a spear with a sharp point?
Narcotics criminals are very cagey. If Mike had been obviously killed by a spear gun, it would have touched off a big investigation.
Yeah, it probably would have led to the discovery of their narcotics fields.
Exactly. They tried to make it look like an accident.
I see.
Now, lucky they did, Mike, or you wouldn't be here.
Hey, why don't we put their minds at rest?
What do you mean?
Give out word that the body of an unidentified skin diver was found drifting in the ocean. Apparently the victim of drowning.
Good. That might throw him off the track. Then we can make further plans.
Yeah, well, my further plans are already made. And it includes those two characters who tried to kill me.
It didn't take us any time to come up with a sound, workable plan. Next morning, Andy Watson and I set out to put it into effect.
Mike, my conscience tells me to try and talk you out of this.
Well, you tell your conscience to take a vacation.
But you're dealing with a powerful narcotics ring. You'll be risking your life.
Yeah, plug this in for me, will you?
Yeah.
That's it. Yes.
Got it.
The basis of our plan was a watch on the narcotics field by sonar. I was preparing to take it down and wire it up in some central spot where it could hear the arrival of any divers who came down to harvest their illegal crop. By now, Andy and I were sure the divers weren't arriving from a boat on the surface. Andy had too many men spotted around the coastline to let them get away with that. Somehow, in some mysterious way, the divers were getting into the field without being observed. To Andy, it was just as important to trap the men responsible for the underwater narcotics as to destroy the field itself. And as for me, well, I had a score to settle with a couple of them.
Good luck. Stay out of traps.
Hey, I'll try. I'll hand in my sonar pickup there, will you?
Yeah.
It was a long way out to a likely hiding place for the sonar pickup, but I had enough wire for the job. I was confident I had hidden it well. I swam back toward shore, certain that we'd see results soon, or rather hear them.
The sonar is working fine. So far, everything's as quiet as a mouse.
Oh, that's good.
Except for a few fish here and there. It's pretty good sized ones at that. Makes a fellow wish he had a rod and reel. Not big enough to catch a fish or a dope grower.
Well, I found a good spot for the sonar pickup. Now all we can do is wait.
Yeah.
We took turns all through the day and then the night. Nothing happened.
You heard anything?
Yeah.
Get some sleep for a while, huh? Let me take over.
Yeah.
But next morning, we got a pickup.
Mike! Mike! I think we got some.
Down there, all right. Sounds like more than one. We'll soon find out.
This time I was armed. I hoped that I wouldn't have to use the spear gun, but I wanted to be able to defend myself if I had to. There they were, two of them, as sonar had indicated, and they were not armed, except with the knives they used to harvest the marijuana. They spotted me. I had to make a quick decision. I fired over their heads, hoping to scare them into surrender. One turned and fled. The other didn't scare easy. He came charging at me with his knife. I didn't have any more spears, but the gun helped me block the knife attack. A twist, and I had him. I cut his air hose. That would force him to the surface where Andy Watson's men would be waiting. That left the other man to be accounted for, and he was in a hurry. I strained to catch up to him. He was tiring. He dropped his sack of marijuana. That made it easier for him. I lost sight of him for a moment. Then I saw him, swimming into the mouth of a big intake tube of some kind on the shoreline. Was this a trap? Set up for an emergency like this? Or was this the entrance the divers used to go unobserved to the narcotics field? Well, there was only one way to find out. cautiously. I could be attacked and cut off at any moment. Another tube descended vertically into this one. There was light above. I was sure that the diver had gone up this way. I went up too. I was in a warehouse of some sort. There were wet footprints leading from the manhole. The diver had escaped in that direction. I slipped quietly out of my gear. I was going to find him or else. He was waiting for me.
Get over there. You all right?
I guess so. Except my Adam's apple. Oh, I think it's ruined for good.
Well, the man you chased home with a bale of narcotics was Mark Merrill.
Mark Merrill, is that somebody I should know?
He's been around for a long time.
I don't imagine he'll be around much longer, though.
That's for sure.
Oh, he's quite a man. Crazy combination of intelligence and chicanery. You know, he admitted, not without a show of pride, that he developed the cannabis hybrid and that he leased the building with the underwater intake and set up a legal warehouse business there as a front for his narcotics activity.
It's a clever idea. The weed could be planted and harvested without anybody showing up on top of the water.
Andy.
Yeah.
Tell me, how'd you find that warehouse? And so soon, too.
Well, when I lost you on sonar, I warned my patrols. One of them spotted bubbles and knew it wasn't a mermaid. And then when we picked up the man with the cut air hose, well, he gave us a rest.
I see.
Well, what Merrill was doing was brilliant botanical work. We could use him in the space program.
You could have.
Yeah. I think we can get along without his talents.
Hello there. I'm Lloyd Bridges. You know, 3/5 of the world is covered by the sea. And how little most of us know about that underwater world. Go below with us again next week, huh? For another thrilling adventure in Sea Hunt.
a launching pad in the U.S., a space probe made a perfect takeoff. Within minutes, a new satellite was in orbit, gathering valuable scientific data and transmitting it back to Earth. Around the globe, skilled technicians carefully recorded and tabulated the tiny artificial planet's every precious word. For a few days, all went well. Then, on a small independent island in the Indian Ocean, trouble started. The scientific team, which was monitoring the planet here, was completely frustrated by systematic jamming of the signals from space. The source of the jamming appeared to be in the waters around the island. I'm Mike Nelson, and because I was on the scene, I soon found myself engaged in one of the most baffling and dangerous underwater searches of my career. For days on end, I had the same experience while trying to track down whatever it was that was jamming the signals of our new space satellite. My radio direction finder would lead me closer and closer to the jamming transmission. Then suddenly it would cut off, dead, and begin again in another location. My RDF indicated the new location was almost a mile away. Whatever I was hunting had apparently traveled that mile in a matter of seconds. I couldn't find a thing. Not a thing.
Yes, but you must have some theory as to where this interference is coming from, aren't there?
Yes, I do. But when I get to the place, the source seems to move a mile or two away. Just like that.
Oh, impossible.
Would you like to make a dive with me and hear for yourself?
I'm not disputing your word, old man, but there's nothing on Earth that can move underwater just like that.
Listen, there's some oceanographic ships that have been out there every day. Do you know anything about them?
We have very little contact with them.
Yes, and I must admit the countries sponsoring them haven't been what you might call over-cooperative.
Let's suppose that they have one ship here, one over here, one here, and one here. Now, let's assume that each one of them have some kind of a radio jammer.
Ah, but our radio direction finder has received no interference from any of these ships.
All right. And let's suppose that they have something floating in the end of a long line. Something with a tiny, almost invisible broadcast antenna that sticks up out of the water.
And when you get close to it, they turn it off and haul it in?
That's right. And they start the interference from another ship. When I get too close to that jammer, they shut that one off, and another ship's jammer goes into operation.
This idea bears looking into.
When you go, Mike, do you mind if a volunteer comes along?
Not at all, Doctor. Be glad to have you with me. Early in the morning, though. We waited till the ships of the oceanographic expedition rendezvoused late in the day. They moored side by side. Dr. Herschel and I swam quietly under them and began our inspection. Any type of underwater jamming gear would have to be attached to their hulls. We checked the hulls carefully. Nothing. We went over all the boats quickly but methodically. Our guess had been wrong. Whatever caused the interference wasn't to be found here.
We should be receiving the planet in a minute from now. That is, if the interference doesn't start up again.
Well, it's usually blasting out long before this time, isn't it? Maybe we're going to get a break, huh?
Let's keep our fingers crossed. It's about time those gremlins got off the airwaves. Isn't that beautiful?
Beautiful.
Doc, here we go again.
Our new plan involved a lot of effort, but it was systematic and thorough. I had gone underwater with the radio direction finder and homed in on a jamming signal as long as possible. When it stopped, I got a bearing on the new sound that started in the distance. Dr. Herschel and I marked the spot on the chart where I had lost the first signal. It was Dr. Herschel's turn now. He would repeat the same procedure that I had followed. He went underwater in the direction of the new bearing that I had taken. We kept at it most of the morning, taking turns diving and resting. And we began to get some sort of a picture. There were only 4 places where the sounds occurred. Just as we had learned from our earlier experience, they were about a mile away from each other. It was my last dive of the day. I was close to the jamming signal. The sound was at a peak, and so was the needle on my RDF. I knew that I was in the vicinity of one of the jammers, but I had no idea just how near. The jamming stopped. Then it started again. All of a sudden, I knew I'd found it. I started toward it, but I was never going to get there. The spear had only grazed me, but something was wrong. My whole body was numb. I was blacking out. I reached for a buoy to float me to the surface. I couldn't handle it. I grabbed for my knife to signal Dr. Herschel. It dropped from my hands. I lost consciousness completely. Dr. Herschel knew that I'd been down too long. He was searching for me. It was lucky he found me when he did. Another few seconds and I'd have drowned. Hello, Dr. Herschel.
Mike!
Dr. Wells?
Mike, are you all right, old man?
Yeah, it's okay. It's my head. Boy, I really got a pip. Never been unconscious that long before. Hi, Doctor.
The creature that stung you had a lot of venom in it.
That was no creature, Doc. It was a spear. Probably had some kind of a drug on it, too.
Yes, but you also told us about some jamming coming from jellyfish on Leish's zones.
They are. Or at least something that looks like a jellyfish.
Now, I went over the whole area, Mike, and there weren't any jellyfish. Not even floating around loose.
Well, you didn't go over it well enough.
Mike, I think you ought to take a little more rest. Where are you going?
Swimming.
Now?
Yes, now. I'm gonna get you one of those jellyfish, or that spear, or both.
I'm going too.
Both Dr. Wells and Dr. Herschel were skeptical about the spear. But Herschel was a good guy, and he was willing to go along with me. We separated near the spot where I'd gotten in trouble to search the area systematically. I was the one who found it. I tapped a signal on my tanks. There was no doubt about it. This was the spear that had knocked me out. Now to take it topside and find out just why it had had so violent an effect.
You find out anything at the lab?
The spear was poisoned, deadly poisoned, enough to kill a man.
It was extracted from a sculpin and applied to the spear with a waxy, waterproof mixture. I figure there's only one group around here with a marine know-how to come up with a thing like that.
The oceanographers. We should make a report to the authorities.
I've already talked to the governor. He's not prepared to take any action until he has more conclusive proof of an illegal act.
How much proof does he want?
The spear wasn't enough.
Well, he probably wants to see one of those jellyfish in the end of a leash. That's what I'd like to have, too. How about you?
I would, too.
Let's go jellyfish hunting, huh?
Right.
We knew where to look on this trip. The thing, whatever it was no longer in operation at the spot where I'd been clobbered. But 3 others were, and we had no trouble now finding one of them. We watched it descend. Then we moved in to inspect it. It did look like a jellyfish, all right. Now that it was down, it looked like a jellyfish on a rock. But the whole thing was clever camouflage. The jellyfish was man-made of plastic, and the rock was the device that controlled its ascent and descent, and probably sent out the jamming signal. Inspection showed it was easily portable. We decided to take it topside for a thorough examination.
Most diabolical thing I've ever seen. Look at that. That's pretty ingenious, huh?
Artificial jellyfish that floats a radio antenna to the surface, extending it clear out of the water.
Gotta be a catch here someplace. Miniature radio transmitter.
Probably operated by remote control.
What turned it off? Huh? And wound it down to the bottom when we got near it. That wasn't a remote control.
There's your answer. An electronic sensing device with a built-in cutoff that operates when anything as large as a man approaches. It sends a cone-shaped beam right up to the surface.
Ah, so that's why we could get nearer to it when we swam in deeper. This ought to be all the evidence we need.
Ah.
Hey, Maybe there's only 2 more of these jammers left out there, huh?
We had 4 spots plotted. This one's gone. The one you saw the other day's been removed. Maybe.
Shouldn't be too difficult to find them now. What do you say? Want to give it a try?
I certainly do.
Okay, you look for one, I'll look for the other.
Right.
Gotta ditch this thing, huh?
Our plan was simple, and it seemed logical. Find the 2 remaining jamming units, put them out of business, and then let the authorities know the score. We figured without one important element, that we might be under observation by the Oceanographic Group.
We must hurry. All ready?
Oh, now wait.
They can't wait. Nelson and the doctor are already looking for those other machines.
You promised not to use explosives.
When it comes to the scientific work, you are the leader. Do what you want. In other matters, I take charge. Don't interfere.
It's only that I don't want any trouble.
There will be no trouble. There will merely be 2 insignificant underwater explosions. Nothing more. Let's go.
Dr. Herschel and I had to search for the jamming gadgets. The Oceanographic boys didn't. They knew exactly where to go. They knew exactly what to do, too. This device was a booby trap, which could kill anybody within a few hundred feet. They armed it and planted it under the jammer so that a slight movement would set it off. Dr. Herschel and I were now in the area where we knew the 2 remaining jammers were located. We split up, each heading for one of the jammers. Meantime, the enemy crew had reached the second of their weird units and proceeded to booby trap it in the same way as the other. When I found the first jammer, I went right to work on it. My intention was to put it out of business the simplest possible way, by breaking open the watertight seal, letting the seawater in to flood the delicate circuits, and short them out. I didn't know that I was within inches of blowing myself to bits. Suddenly, I saw it. I knew what it was immediately. In my own experience with underwater demolition, I'd planted plenty of these myself. I held it down good and tight. These things worked on pressure. If I let go, I'd be a very dead duck. Very gingerly, I disarmed it. Now I could finish working on the jamming device. I had to move fast. Dr. Herschel, I was sure, would be up against a booby trap, too. And the odds were 100 to 1 that he'd never recognize it. I tried with the RDF to get a bearing on the other jammer, but there was no response. That meant Dr. Herschel had already reached it, and it had stopped transmitting. Now it was more urgent than ever that I get there. When I finally caught sight of him, I was afraid that I was already too late. He was working busily on the seal, unaware of the danger. I pounded on my tanks to get his attention. If he triggered that booby trap, we'd both be killed. He didn't get the message. I darn near flew the remaining distance. I practically knocked him away from the booby trap. I breathed easier when I finally disarmed this baby. I don't think that Dr. Herschel really understood what was going on, or how close to death we'd both been. It was only later, after we'd gotten topside and were waiting for the man-made planet to come within our range, that I explained what he'd really been up against.
Are you sure that thing's perfectly harmless, Roman?
I'm sure. Why don't you keep it as a souvenir?
No, thanks, Mike. It's enough for me just knowing those jellyfish are gone for good.
Along with those men that planted them, and that fellow who speared you. My only regret is that they got off unpunished.
I wouldn't be too sure about that, Doctor. They were sent here to do a job, and they failed. Where they come from, you know what happens to them for that.
Dr. Wells? Mike, listen. Our planet's coming in loud and clear.
I could listen to that forever.
Oh, you do that, Doctor. I'm gonna go pack. I'll see you all at dinner, huh?
What's got into him?
I think Mike's heard enough beeps and squeals to last him for a good long time.
Oh, some people just don't have any musical appreciation.
Hi there. I'm Lloyd Bridges. Skin diving is certainly a lot of fun, and it's full of adventure. See some more of it again next week, huh? When there'll be another excursion into that fabulous underwater world of Sea Hunt.